43% of American adults are currently carrying around a toxic, hidden layer of fat that wraps directly around their organs. It is sitting there right now, silently driving up inflammation, messing with your hormones, and putting serious strain on your heart. And doing 1,000 crunches a day will never get rid of it. Today, we are breaking down the 3 exact science-backed habits that actually force your body to burn that stubborn, visceral fat. I am going to show you how to flip your metabolic switch so you get a flatter stomach, but more importantly, add years to your life. But you have to stick around for the 3rd habit, because it exposes the one so-called healthy morning routine that is secretly causing your body to hoard belly fat. Welcome back to 30-Day Health. If you are new here, hit subscribe, because what you are about to hear is going to completely blow your mind. Before we fix the issue, you have to understand what is actually going on inside your body. Most people treat all fat exactly the same. They think fat is just stored calories. So they starve themselves, they run on treadmills for hours until their knees hurt, and they do endless sit-ups on the living room floor. But there is a massive difference between subcutaneous fat and visceral fat. Subcutaneous fat is the soft stuff. It is the fat you can physically pinch with your fingers on your arms, your legs, or your lower stomach. It might be annoying when you're trying to fit into a pair of jeans, but biologically speaking, it is relatively harmless. Visceral fat is an entirely different beast. This is the hard, dangerous fat that lives deep inside your abdominal cavity. It sits directly beneath your muscle wall and literally packs itself around your liver, your stomach, and your intestines. Because it is behind the muscle, it pushes your entire belly outward. That is why someone can have a large, protruding stomach that feels completely rock hard to the touch. That hardness is the muscle wall being pushed out by the visceral fat underneath it. Visceral fat is not just a storage unit for extra calories. It is an active, toxic organ. It actively secretes inflammatory chemicals called cytokines directly into your bloodstream. It drives up your blood pressure. It causes insulin resistance. And here is the kicker. You cannot exercise visceral fat away if your hormones are out of balance. Visceral fat is an intensely hormonal issue, driven almost entirely by 2 major players: insulin, which is your storage hormone, and cortisol, which is your stress hormone. If you do not fix the hormonal environment inside your body, that fat stays permanently locked in. Your body will absolutely refuse to let it go. You could eat 1,000 calories a day and run 5 miles, and your body will burn away your muscle tissue before it touches that visceral fat. Today is your roadmap to finally outsmart your biology, without being miserable, without starving, and without spending hours in a gym. The very first habit you have to build is mastering your insulin. Insulin is the hormone your pancreas releases whenever you eat, especially when you eat carbohydrates or sugar. Its job is to clear the sugar out of your blood and store it for later. But as long as insulin is elevated in your bloodstream, your body is in storage mode. And when you are in storage mode, fat burning is completely shut off. It is biologically impossible to burn visceral fat while insulin is high. So, the very first step to fixing this is establishing a 12-hour fasting baseline. This means you stop all calorie intake for exactly 12 hours overnight. Visceral fat can only be tapped into for energy when insulin levels drop all the way down to their absolute baseline. For the average human body, 12 hours is the minimum time threshold required to flip the biological switch from storing fat to actually burning it. Your liver holds on to stored sugar, called glycogen. When you stop eating, your body slowly burns through that liver glycogen to keep your brain functioning while you sleep. Once that liver glycogen runs out, which usually takes about 10 to 12 hours of fasting, your body sounds an alarm. It realizes no more food is coming in, the easy sugar is gone, and it has to find an alternative fuel source. That is the exact moment it unlocks your visceral fat stores. Doing this is incredibly simple, but you have to be strict about the timing. If you finish your last bite of dinner at 7 in the evening, you consume 0 calories until 7 the next morning. During that 12-hour window, you can have water, and you can have plain black coffee or plain tea in the morning. That is it. A massive study recently showed that people who just restricted their eating to a 10 to 12-hour window lost significant amounts of visceral fat without changing a single thing about what they actually ate. They did not count calories. They did not cut out their favorite foods. They just gave their bodies enough time with low insulin to finally do the work. The most common mistake people make here is the tiny late night snack. You watch a movie at 10 o'clock and you grab a handful of pretzels, or you have a tiny piece of chocolate, or you pour a splash of sweet creamer into your coffee at 6 in the morning. You think it is only 50 calories, so it does not matter. But your pancreas does not care about calories. It cares about sugar. That tiny splash of creamer spikes your insulin, slams the door shut on your fat-burning window, and resets the 12-hour clock completely. You have to give your digestive system true, uninterrupted rest. Now, once you conquer the 12-hour baseline, your next move happens the second you break that fast. You need to drop a 30-gram protein anchor. You need to eat 30 grams of highly bioavailable protein for your very first meal of the day. When you wake up, your body is highly sensitive to whatever you put into it. If you eat a traditional American breakfast, like a bagel, a bowl of cereal, or a piece of toast with jam, you are dumping a massive load of pure carbohydrates into an empty stomach. Your blood sugar rockets sky high. Your pancreas panics and floods your system with insulin to bring that sugar down. The insulin does its job too well. Your blood sugar crashes 2 hours later, and suddenly you are starving, exhausted, and craving a donut at 10 in the morning. Worse, all that excess sugar your body did not need for immediate energy was just packed away as fresh visceral fat. Protein stops this entire roller coaster before it even starts. Protein is incredibly difficult for your body to digest, which means it digests very slowly. It does not spike your blood sugar. More importantly, protein physically blunts the release of ghrelin, which is your body's primary hunger hormone. When you hit that 30-gram threshold, your brain receives a powerful signal that you are completely nourished. It shuts off your cravings for the rest of the day. To do this, you just need to rethink what breakfast looks like. 4 whole eggs will give you about 24 to 28 grams of high-quality protein. A high-quality whey protein shake will give you 25 to 30 grams. A large cup of plain Greek yogurt topped with a handful of hemp seeds will easily push you past 30 grams. Think about the difference between eating a plain bagel versus eating 4 scrambled eggs. The bagel digests in 30 minutes, spikes your insulin, and leaves you starving. The eggs digest over 4 hours, keep your insulin flat, and keep your body in a fat-burning state long after you finish eating. The biggest mistake people make with this step is relying on heavily marketed protein bars. If you flip those bars over and read the label, most of them are absolutely packed with artificial syrups, hidden sugars, and sugar alcohols that still trigger an insulin response. You want real, whole food protein to set your metabolic anchor for the day. As you move through your day, lunch and dinner require a different strategy. This is where you implement the fiber-first rule. You need to eat your vegetables and your fiber before you touch a single carbohydrate on your plate. This sounds almost too simple to be real, but the biological impact is staggering. When you eat fiber on an empty stomach, it moves into your upper intestine and mixes with water to create a thick, physical gel-like mesh. It literally lines the walls of your digestive tract. When you eat your carbohydrates 5 or 10 minutes later, those starches and sugars have to fight their way through that thick fiber mesh just to get absorbed into your bloodstream. This physical barrier slows down the absorption of glucose so dramatically that it completely flattens the insulin spike. You can eat the exact same meal with the exact same calories, but if you eat the food in the right order, your body reacts completely differently. You eat a side salad first, or you eat a serving of roasted broccoli first. Then you eat your chicken or your steak. Then, and only then, do you eat your rice, your potatoes, or your pasta. Continuous glucose monitor experiments have shown time and time again that eating food in this specific order can reduce your blood sugar spike by up to 73%. That is 73% less insulin flooding your system, simply because you ate the broccoli before the rice. The biggest mistake people make when trying to get their fiber is throwing it all into a high-speed blender and making a smoothie. When you blend a vegetable or a fruit, the sharp metal blades pulverize the cellular structure of the fiber. You are essentially pre-digesting the food, which destroys the fiber's ability to form that protective mesh in your intestine. When you drink a blended smoothie, the sugar hits your bloodstream almost as fast as if you were drinking a soda. You have to chew your fiber to get the metabolic benefit. The final step in mastering your insulin is the apple cider vinegar hack. 15 minutes before your heaviest, most carbohydrate-rich meal of the day, you need to drink 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar diluted in a tall glass of water. Apple cider vinegar contains a powerful compound called acetic acid. Acetic acid does two incredible things inside your body. First, it temporarily blocks the enzymes in your saliva and your stomach that break down starches. This means a portion of the carbohydrates you eat passes right through your system without ever turning into sugar. Second, acetic acid vastly improves your insulin sensitivity. It acts like a chemical key that opens up the doors to your muscle cells, telling your muscles to aggressively soak up the glucose from your meal. If the sugar goes into your muscles to be used for energy, it cannot go to your liver to be stored as visceral fat. To use this properly, you just mix 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar into a large glass of water. You must drink it through a straw. Acetic acid is highly acidic, and if you drink it straight from a glass every single day, it will erode the enamel on your teeth over time. Use a straw, bypass the teeth, and drink it 15 minutes before dinner. There was a famous Japanese study where participants were given either a placebo or a daily dose of vinegar. Over a 12-week period, the group taking the vinegar lost significant amounts of visceral belly fat, and they did not change their diet or their exercise routine at all. The vinegar alone shifted how their bodies partitioned the energy. The massive mistake here is drinking it straight like a shot, which will severely burn your esophagus and damage your throat tissue. The other huge mistake is buying those trendy apple cider vinegar gummies. Those gummies are completely useless. They are stripped of the actual acetic acid mother, and they are usually bound together with tapioca syrup and cane sugar. You are literally eating candy and spiking your insulin to deliver a microscopic amount of vinegar. Stick to the real liquid, mix it with water, and drink it through a straw. If you are already rethinking your breakfast tomorrow and planning out your fiber, hit that like button and subscribe, because the next habit is going to completely change how you look at exercise forever. So getting your insulin down is step 1, but none of that matters if you do not trigger the fat to actually move out of your midsection, which brings us to the craziest part of how your muscles actually work. Habit number 2 is all about strategic, fat-mobilizing movement. Notice I did not say grueling, exhausting exercise. The way you move dictates what kind of fuel your body burns, and most people are moving in a way that actively prevents fat loss. Step 5 is the absolute easiest way to start, and it is the post-meal 10-minute walk. You need to walk for just 10 minutes within 30 minutes of finishing a meal. When you eat a meal, your blood sugar begins to rise. Your body prepares to release insulin to deal with it. But your muscles have a secret backdoor mechanism. When your muscles are actively contracting and bearing weight, like they do when you are walking, they open up specialized receptors called GLUT4 receptors. These receptors pull glucose straight out of your bloodstream to use for immediate energy, and they do it without needing a single drop of insulin. Walking right after you eat acts as a massive insulin sink. You are literally draining the sugar out of your blood before your pancreas even realizes it needs to produce insulin. If the sugar never reaches your fat cells, it cannot be stored as visceral fat. Wait until you hear how just 10 minutes can completely erase the damage of a heavy carb meal. All you have to do is put your shoes on right after dinner and walk around your neighborhood. You do not need to speed walk. You do not need to break a heavy sweat. You just need a brisk, conversational pace. Italian and Mediterranean cultures have been doing this for hundreds of years. They call it the passeggiata. It is a cultural tradition to take a slow, gentle stroll through the town square immediately after a heavy pasta dinner. And historically, these cultures have incredibly low rates of visceral obesity and metabolic disease, despite eating diets very high in carbohydrates. They are instinctively managing their blood sugar with movement. The fatal mistake people make here is waiting too long. They eat a heavy dinner, they feel lethargic, so they sit on the couch to watch television, telling themselves they will go for a walk in 2 hours. By the time 2 hours have passed, the damage is already done. The blood sugar spiked, the insulin flooded the system, and the sugar was violently shoved into the visceral fat stores. You have to walk while the food is actively digesting. Step 6 moves us into your actual weekly exercise routine, and it is all about the minimum effective dose of Zone 2 cardio. You need to accumulate 150 minutes a week of Zone 2 cardiovascular work. Zone 2 is a very specific intensity level. It is roughly 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. Why is this so specific? Because of how your mitochondria function. At this exact intensity level, your body requires a steady, slow release of energy. The absolute best source of slow, steady energy in the human body is fat. When you are in zone 2, your body oxidizes fat as its primary fuel source. You can achieve this through a light jog, riding a stationary bike, or putting a treadmill on a steep incline and walking at a brisk pace. You know you are in zone 2 if you are sweating, you feel your heart rate up, but you can still hold a conversation with someone next to you without gasping for air. If you have to stop talking to catch your breath, you are going too hard. Elite endurance athletes, the leanest people on planet Earth, spend up to 80% of their entire training volume exclusively in zone 2. It builds a massive mitochondrial engine that turns them into literal fat-burning machines, even when they are just sitting around. The biggest mistake the average person makes in the gym is going way too hard. They think if they are not dying in a pool of sweat, the workout does not count. They do brutal high-intensity interval training, or they sprint until they feel sick. But here is the biological reality. When you push your heart rate into those extreme high-intensity zones, your body panics. It needs energy instantly. Fat takes too long to break down, so your body completely shuts off fat burning and switches exclusively to burning stored sugar. High-intensity workouts are great for cardiovascular power, but they are terrible for actively burning visceral fat during the session. Keep it slow, keep it steady, and stay in the fat-burning zone. Step 7 is the final piece of the movement puzzle, and it is heavy resistance training. You need to lift heavy weights 2 to 3 times a week. We already talked about how walking acts as an insulin sink, but building actual muscle tissue creates a permanent metabolic sink. Muscle is the most metabolically active tissue on your body. The larger and denser your muscles are, the larger the storage tank you have for carbohydrates. Think about it like a sponge. If you have tiny, atrophied muscles, your sponge is the size of a golf ball. When you eat a plate of pasta, that tiny sponge fills up with sugar almost instantly. The rest of the sugar overflows and gets dumped straight into your belly as visceral fat. But if you have dense, trained muscles, your sponge is the size of a beach towel. You can eat that same plate of pasta, and your massive muscle sponge easily soaks up every single drop of that glucose to replenish its glycogen stores. There is zero overflow. There is zero new visceral fat created. To build this sink, you have to focus on compound movements that recruit large amounts of muscle fiber at once. These include squats, deadlifts, heavy push-ups, and rows. You want to work the large muscles of your legs, your back, and your chest. There is a famous case study of a 50-year-old man who completely reversed his prediabetes and eliminated his visceral gut simply by adding 10 pounds of muscle mass to his legs and his back. He gave the sugar a place to go. The most common mistake here is what you see in commercial gyms every day. People grabbing tiny 3-pound pink dumbbells and doing 50 repetitions of bicep curls, thinking it will tone their arms. That does absolutely nothing to build dense muscle tissue. You need enough heavy mechanical tension to actually tear the muscle fibers and force them to grow back larger. Lift heavy enough that the last 3 reps of your set feel genuinely difficult. Building that muscle sink is a total game changer. If you are getting value out of this and want more no BS science tips like this, drop a comment below with your favorite way to work out, and make sure you are subscribed. Now we move into the silent killer. And the reason why most stressed people cannot lose the gut? You will not believe it, but it happens while you are completely unconscious. Habit number 3 is all about crushing the stress hormone, cortisol. You can do the fasting, you can eat the protein, you can walk after every meal. But if your cortisol levels are chronically elevated, your body will absolutely refuse to drop the visceral fat. Cortisol is a survival hormone. In ancient times, high cortisol meant a famine or a brutal winter was coming, and your body needed to store emergency energy near your vital organs to keep you alive. Today, your body does not know the difference between a famine and a stressful email from your boss. It reacts the exact same way. It hoards belly fat. Step 8 is implementing the no-screen cortisol wind-down. You must turn off all blue light and all digital screens at least 60 minutes before you go to bed. The screens on your phone, your tablet, and your television emit a very specific wavelength of blue light. When this blue light enters your eyes, it hits your pineal gland and tricks your brain into thinking it is high noon on a sunny day. Your brain responds by suppressing melatonin, which is your sleep hormone, and artificially spiking cortisol to keep you awake and alert. If you carry high cortisol into your sleep cycle, it creates a massive metabolic disaster. High chronic cortisol literally relocates fat from your arms and your legs and deposits it directly into your visceral abdominal cavity. It chemically signals your body to strip fat from the extremities and pack it around the liver. We see this incredibly clearly in shift workers. Nurses, police officers, and overnight security guards who have severely disrupted circadian rhythms and constant artificial light exposure have significantly higher rates of visceral obesity than the general population, even when their diets are perfectly matched. To fix this, you have to create a physical boundary. 1 hour before bed, the phone goes on a charger in another room. The television turns off. You read a physical paper book. You do some light stretching on the floor, or you listen to a podcast or an audiobook in a dimly lit room. You have to signal to your brain that the sun is set and it is safe to power down. The biggest mistake people make is turning on the yellow night mode filter on their phone and thinking that solves the problem. The yellow filter might block a little bit of the blue light, but you are still sitting in bed scrolling through highly stressful social media feeds, reading negative news stories, or checking work emails. The psychological stress of the content spikes your cortisol just as badly as the light itself. Put the screen away. Step 9 is the deep sleep prioritization and magnesium protocol. You need to get 7 to 8 hours of high-quality sleep, and you need to aid that process with magnesium glycinate. Sleep is not just a time for rest. It is a highly active metabolic state where your body repairs cellular damage and regulates its insulin sensitivity. Just one single night of partial sleep deprivation, getting maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep, causes a staggering 30% drop in your insulin sensitivity the very next day. Just one bad night of sleep turns you temporarily pre-diabetic. Your body cannot process sugar, and it pumps out extra cortisol to keep you awake through the exhaustion. To guarantee deep, restorative REM sleep, you need to set your environment up for success. Keep your bedroom cold, ideally around 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which naturally drops your core body temperature and signals sleep. And an hour before bed, take 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate. Magnesium is a crucial mineral that acts as a natural relaxant for your central nervous system. It binds to calming receptors in your brain, quieting down the racing thoughts and physically relaxing your muscle tissue. It is the ultimate antidote to a high-stress day. Studies have repeatedly shown that individuals who are sleep-deprived eat an average of 300 or more extra calories the very next day, and they almost exclusively crave highly processed, sugary carbohydrates because their brain is desperately searching for quick energy. By locking in your sleep, you automatically control your appetite. The massive mistake people make here is walking into a pharmacy and buying the cheapest bottle of magnesium on the shelf. This is almost always magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is incredibly poorly absorbed by the human body. It does not cross the blood-brain barrier to calm you down. Instead, it just sits in your intestinal tract, pulls water into your bowels, and acts as a harsh laxative. You will wake up in the middle of the night running to the bathroom instead of getting deep sleep. You must look at the back of the bottle and ensure it specifically says magnesium glycinate. We have got one final step and the massive bonus tip coming up. Real quick, if you have not yet, hit subscribe so you never miss these deep dives. Step 10 brings us back to the opening hook of this video, and it is the absolute elimination of liquid fructose. You must cut out all sugary drinks, especially fruit juices and sodas. To understand why this is so critical, you have to understand how your liver processes different types of sugar. When you eat regular glucose, like from a potato or rice, every single cell in your entire body can use that glucose for energy. Your muscles use it, your brain uses it, your heart uses it. But fructose is entirely different. Fructose can only be metabolized in one place, and that is your liver. When you drink a massive dose of liquid fructose, your liver gets hit with a tsunami of sugar all at once. It cannot process it fast enough. When the liver gets overwhelmed, it triggers an emergency biological process called de novo lipogenesis. This literally translates to the new creation of fat. Your liver takes all that excess liquid fructose and instantly converts it into liver fat and visceral belly fat. It does not even give your muscles a chance to burn it. This is exactly why that so-called healthy morning routine of drinking a large glass of orange juice with your breakfast is destroying your waistline. Orange juice is marketed as a health food, packed with vitamin C and sunshine. But biologically, once you strip away the fiber of the whole orange, you are left with concentrated liquid fructose. A glass of orange juice hits your liver with the exact same violent fructose load as a can of soda. It is practically identical to drinking a Coke for breakfast. You are mainlining visceral fat directly into your midsection. To fix this, you just swap the liquid for the whole food. If you want an orange, eat a whole physical orange. The fiber inside the fruit slows down the fructose absorption so your liver can easily handle it. If you crave the carbonation of soda, swap it for sparkling water with a heavy squeeze of fresh lime or lemon juice. The most common mistake people make when trying to be healthy is swapping out high fructose corn syrup for things like organic agave nectar or organic cane sugar drinks. They read the word organic and assume it is safe. It does not matter if the sugar was blessed by a monk on a mountain. Your liver processes the fructose in organic agave nectar the exact same way it processes the fructose in cheap soda. It turns it into belly fat. Cut the liquid sugar entirely. Now, before we get to your action plan, I need to give you a massive bonus tip that will save you hours of wasted effort. Stop doing endless AB workouts. It sounds crazy, but doing 500 crunches a day will actually make your belly look significantly bigger if you have a layer of visceral fat. Think about the anatomy of your stomach. You have your internal organs, then you have the thick layer of visceral fat packing them in, then you have your abdominal muscles sitting on top of that fat, and finally, your skin. When you do hundreds of crunches, weighted sit-ups, and aggressive core work, you are actively building and thickening your abdominal muscles. You are making those muscle blocks larger. But if you do not strip away the visceral fat underneath them first, those newly enlarged muscles have nowhere to go but outward. The thicker your abs get, the more they push against the fat, and the further your stomach actually protrudes. You are literally building a thicker wall on top of a swollen foundation. You will feel your abs getting stronger, but your waistline will actually expand. You have to focus entirely on the kitchen, the fasting, the walking, and the hormones first. You have to drain the visceral fat out of the cavity. Once the fat is gone and the stomach flattens out, then you can start hitting the crunches to carve out the definition. Abs are built in the gym, but they are revealed by lowering insulin and cortisol. So what does this actually look like in real life? You do not need to memorize the complex biology. Here is your simple 1-2-3 action plan to start literally today. Number 1, tonight, the second you swallow your last bite of dinner, set a 12-hour timer on your phone. If you finish at 7:30, you do not consume a single calorie until 7:30 tomorrow morning. Give your liver the time it needs to drain the glycogen and open up the fat stores. Number 2, tomorrow morning, when you break that fast, eat 30 grams of high-quality protein before you touch a single carbohydrate. Scramble those 4 eggs. Mix up that Greek yogurt. Set your metabolic anchor so your hunger hormones are silenced for the rest of the day. Number 3, tomorrow evening, right after you finish your dinner, put your shoes on and walk out the front door for 10 minutes. Drain the glucose out of your blood, bypass the insulin spike, and use the food you just ate to power your muscles instead of feeding your belly fat. Do not try to change your entire life overnight. You do not need to be perfect. Pick just one of those 3 action steps right now. Pick the one that feels the easiest to you and try it for the next 7 days. Your body desperately wants to burn this fat. It wants to be lean, it wants to be light, and it wants to be healthy. You have just been unknowingly fighting against its natural biology. Now you have the tools to give it the right environment to do what it does best. Get out there, take that post-meal walk, and I will see you next time.